Hello, Calaveras County, and welcome to another edition of Mondo Calaveras. I'm your host, Mike Taylor. Now, with summertime basically here, let's face it, we've passed the fair, so in Calaveras County we consider that summertime. What happens? Well, we end up seeing the cone zone. We end up with road construction in the area, and my guest this edition is Warren Alford, the Public Information Officer for District 10 with CalTrans. Warren, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for letting me come and speak with you, Mike.
Oh, you bet, Warren. Now, there is a lot going on just in Calaveras County, but even before we get to that, I want to back up a little bit. It seems like the legislature and the governor are kind of seeing that our roads have needed a little bit of attention, and CalTrans has gotten some pretty healthy kind of, I guess I'll say, capital outlays. So how is that kind of being perceived within CalTrans?
Well, obviously, we have an incredible road network, roads, bridges, mass transportation. California is the fifth largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
And so our transportation is really the backbone of that economy. And we've known for a long time that it's been underfunded, that we have a backlog of maintenance. And so this has really been an opportunity for us to try to catch up and take care of that critical part of California's infrastructure and economy.
Mm-hmm. And let's jump right into Calaveras County.
Yeah.
And this, our first topic, is one that I've known about for years and years. And it's not because I'm kind of in the news world, it's because I used to drive between San Andreas and Copperopolis a lot.
Okay.
And we're talking about the Wagon Trail project.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the final section of Highway 4 to be what I will call straightened out between Copper and Angels Camp. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Wagon Trail has been on the books for quite a while. And the Calaveras Council of Governments is really in the lead on that project. CalTrans is in kind of an oversight role.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously help with funding for that. We recognize that that's a critical link between Calaveras County and the rest of California. Mm-hmm. So it's an important part of our of Calaveras County's economy. But the other thing is, it's got about twice the accident rate as other routes in California. And so, once upon a time, it really served the function of our county well. And I think people really like the rolling hills and the kind of the intimate curves. But the reality is, as we move forward, we really want to make sure we've got a system that is safe and efficient, and so that's a key link that needs to be fixed, and the COG is kind of prioritized for Calaveras County.
And just so folks know, the Wagon Trail section of Highway 4 is kind of right around Hunt Road. That kind of, I guess I would say, west of Pool Station Road?
Yes, west of Pool Station Road, mm-hmm. And really where you tie into the new section just before Copper is where it would kind of fill in that gap, all the way to Angels Camp. And,
okay.
Yeah, and it will be done in probably 3 phases as funding's available, so it's not going to be one shot.
Okay.
And I think the first phase will probably be the section around Pool Station Road. Where we already did straighten part of it, and so there's still a section there that I think would benefit from being improved first.
Would that be like between Pool Station and Hunt Road, that really narrow section?
Well, probably just to the east of that, coming into Angels Camp, because you know how you come down the hill after Pool Station coming towards Angels Camp, and there's a little bit of a sharp turn there.
Yeah, there's
so it's an opportunity to fix that in particular.
Okay. So what's kind of the timing for that? With it, I mean, if it's been planning for this long and we're just now starting to talk money, I would imagine that there isn't even a final plan yet, is there?
No, they've essentially settled on an alternative 2, for those of your viewers who are actively involved in the planning process. And that's the plan that follows the existing route a little bit more closely.
I see.
And so it's a little bit cheaper. It allowed us to have less right-of-way acquisition, smaller footprint. to be able to actually do it in phases so that the funding can be lined up with the project need more easily.
Rather than one gigantic chunk, being able to do it in some smaller pieces. Huh?
Yep, exactly. So once the environmental document is complete, which is, sometime in the next probably 12 months, it'll be 2 or 3 years after that construction starts. So, we're hoping 2020, 2021, and that, I think it'll be here before we know it for sure.
It's kind of like talking about the Angels bypass, really, because we were all talking about it, and then we went a couple of years, maybe 3, and then all of a sudden the work got to start.
Right.
So,
very similar process. It starts with public outreach and involvement, and all those public meetings, and so that there's all that focus and information,
sure.
And then we go into the design phase, and they take all those good ideas that were brought forward, and they have to actually put together something that can be built.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a lull period, and then we get to break ground, and all of a sudden people realize, hey, this is happening.
That's it. And I'm guessing that these new sections of Highway 4 will look about what the other improved sections, they'll be much wider and have the big healthy shoulders and that kind of thing.
Yep, very similar, and certainly that kind of design provides for safe recovery zones,
sure.
Better sight lines, and but it still will follow kind of the original contour. And as you know from those new sections, you realize you're still in the foothills, you're still in Calaveras County. It's just that people will be a little bit more efficient and a lot safer.
Hopefully they'll be able to stay on their lane too, but
right, exactly.
That's the driver issue, not a CalTrans issue, of course.
Exactly.
So we don't even know a dollar amount for that entire project, or do we?
Well, they
kind of
had
a ballpark?
Yeah, they had a range. Alternative 2 was in the $86 million range.
Okay.
And Alternative 1 was more like $100 million. So this is a significant project for this county, and an incredible investment that's being made. Those numbers can obviously change based on when we actually go out to bid,
sure.
what the bids come back like. So we'll have an estimate, and we'll obviously be trying to hit that, but really it's going to come back down to, do we get the bid where we need it? A lot of our projects, thankfully, come in under what we expected.
Okay.
So we really try to be accurate in forecasting what that cost is going to be in the end.
Okay. Now let's move on to the Big Trees Park wall.
Yes.
That's been going on for a little longer than we thought it was gonna, hasn't it?
Yeah, initially that project, it's in the planning process. They essentially have a 2-year construction window.
Oh, okay.
Our contractor that took that one over, which is our local contractor, Emerson, they really had hoped to get it done in one building season.
I see.
And we got into it. It was a little bit more complicated with, especially last year, if you remember the last winter, we had so much water. Once they started to tear into it, there were just various things that came up that had to be dealt with. And so it extended the construction period a little bit. We're still going to finish it on time with what our original estimate was, but not necessarily where we had hoped and where our contractor had hoped to be. So they're going to be working on it this summer, and we expect to have it all complete by the fall, and that'll be a really attractive and efficient section of the road up there as well.
And that's basically kind of just west of the entrance to the park, right?
Correct.
Down for maybe a couple miles, or not even that far?
Yeah, it's not even that far. It starts right at the Big Tree Creek. It's the one crossover that you get to, and essentially that project was done to help protect the water quality in Big Tree Creek.
Oh, I see.
It allowed us to get a little bit more sunlight on the road, and then to capture all the sand that we'll put out to help with ice buildup to keep the traveling public safe. So we're going to be able to use less sand, and we're also going to be able to capture what sand we do put out more efficiently, so that it is better for the creek.
I was going to say the sand doesn't end up in the creek.
Exactly.
Because I know that's something that CalTrans always tries to avoid, right?
Right.
Is that because of what the sand is made of, or it's just an unfamiliar sand to that particular waterway?
Yeah, I'm not a fish biologist,
sure.
Okay, but I think the reality is when we put stuff out on the road, we like to keep it on the road and not have it exit and enter the environment.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay, and so by the fall is the highway technically going to be a little bit wider through there?
There's a little bit more of a shoulder,
and that is what I meant by that, not bigger lanes necessarily, but
but it wasn't technically a widening project. It really was to create a retaining wall and some sediment capture basins and that kind of thing.
Okay, and staying up in the high country, or at least higher country in the county, is tree mortality. How is CalTrans involved with that? Because we have so many dead trees in the mother lode, not just Calaveras, but how is...
Well, the tree mortality problem, as you know, has just been an epidemic, and it's affected local governments, it's affected the state government, it's affected the National Forest Service and National Park Service. So we're all trying to struggle with dealing with it.
Yeah.
We're actively part of the Tree Mortality Task Force, and so we have a contract that we just put out recently that deals with the trees on Highway 49 and to the west, so all the lower elevation areas.
Oh, okay.
And we're expecting to have a new contract that'll help us remove hazard trees in the more upcountry areas that should be in place sometime this summer. Our maintenance crews are continuing to identify trees that are kind of an immediate hazard, and they've got the ability to deal with those. Just over a couple of months ago, we had a giant tree in the middle of Arnold that our local tree crew took down. They did a great job. They closed traffic for about 10 minutes while they dropped this incredible tree. So we'll deal with those immediate hazards, but the other trees that are dead and need to be removed are going to be part of a contract that we put out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and thankfully, by the way, it looks like there are fewer trees dying because we've had such good winters.
Yeah.
And I'm really hopeful that that'll continue.
Yeah, hopefully we can turn this around and the trees don't get stressed so that the bark beetles get into them again and that vicious cycle begins again.
Yeah.
That seems like it was the hardest part, is once you start trees dying, they just keep on dying.
Yeah, it definitely becomes a little bit of an avalanche of how that affects one to the next.
Definitely. Now, something new that's showing up on my radar here on this list is the Glencoe slope repair. What is this one?
Well, it sounds more glamorous than it probably is. But we have an area of the Highway 26 that is just on the north side of the McCollum River Bridge.
Oh, okay.
And the road's been kind of undercut and eroded. And if we don't fix it, then it'll become a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is go in and shore up the wall that holds up the road.
Okay.
And build up the shoulder so that that can really be resilient and won't have a bigger problem that, it's kind of in that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure category.
Sure.
If we can fix it now before it's a big problem, we'll avoid a much bigger problem down the road.
When does that project get started?
That project is scheduled to start in mid-June.
Okay.
It's going to only take about a month, so mid-July they should be done. We'll have probably one-way traffic control. It's a pretty short section, so I don't think it'll be more than 10-minute delays.
Okay.
Every so often something happens, or you need to bring in a big piece of equipment and have to shut. But we try to get that information out to the public, and so that people can plan their commute and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And one of the ways we do that that. We're pretty active on Facebook and Twitter. Those are our primary social media channels, and so we'll get information out that way. We also will send out traditional things to local media, so that we can get that information out a variety of ways.
You bet. Okay. Now, a Murphy's turn lane and the pedestrian mobility sort of plan and planning around Murphy's. Murphy's has gotten congested.
Yeah.
Highway 4 coming through there can be a nightmare on the weekends.
Yeah.
And as we're filming this, we're coming up to Memorial Day weekend, which, you kind of hope you're not going to spend too much time going through that signal. So what's up in Murphy's right now?
Yeah, well, Murphy's is certainly having its moment. It's a popular place, and people love it. So we get a lot of traffic there. We've got kind of two efforts happening. The first is the turn lane project. And essentially what we're going to do is create a two-way turn pocket from Pennsylvania Gulch Road to Main Street. Because what happens in Murphy's a lot of times is when somebody stops in the middle of the road to make a left-hand turn,
that's what
cars queue up behind it. Exactly.
Now, you're not going to like this, but I'm going to say it in the old-fashioned way I was taught, which is the my side, your side, and suicide. This is that. This is the center lane. Is that what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah, the center turn lane.
Okay.
And the great part of having that kind of a facility is it really does get a turning vehicle out of the travel zone and kind of out of harm's way. The intersection at Pennsylvania Gulch, there's the school right there. You've got a gas station and the drugstore with pedestrians, so it's kind of a mess when people are trying to make that turn.
Sure.
So this turn lane project, it will make it a lot safer, and I think traffic will be flowing more effectively through Murphy's. On the kind of complementing that is a grant that the Calaveras Council of Governments got to do a complete streets project to look at how do we get more biking and walking and make Murphy's a place that is easier for people who live there and come to visit to be able to move around, whether it's in a car or on foot or on bicycle.
Okay.
Yep, and it's great because the community is actively involved in helping identify what are the problem areas and what are some creative solutions. So we've had one community planning meeting already. There's another one that's tentatively scheduled right now for June 27th.
Okay.
And we definitely want to have people come out and share their ideas.
Sure.
There's a website, murphyscompletestreets.com, that people can go to and submit comments and learn about the process as well.
Okay. Something I thought of with the left turn lane, and I don't want to oversimplify this, but is that basically just a painting project? Will you repaint the whole highway, or do you have to do some lane construction or anything like that?
There's actually a fair amount of construction because the road in that location, there are pretty significant ditches on both sides.
Oh, that's right.
And so we're going to have to figure out how to create more lane space. And if these two things can kind of be harmonized and we find some other funding, we may actually be able to do some of the complete streets elements at the same time. So potentially some sidewalks and other things. But just to get the turning lane in, we've got to add an extra lane, and that's going to be more pavement, more fill, and then some striping.
Do we know when that might get underway? Is that green-lit and ready to go?
It's pretty much green-lit, ready to go. It's still, timing-wise, it's 2 years out, so 2020.
Okay.
From our perspective, that's tomorrow.
That's speedy in CalTrans terms.
Like,
I'm not going to make any of the jokes.
When you think about how much goes into really planning a big project,
that's true.
It's kind of like dog years. We just, that's to us, that's coming up very quickly. And so the public right now, it's still a couple of years off, but I think it'll feel like it's coming up quickly for everybody else as well.
Sure. Now, speaking of getting around a community, San Andreas has been kind of a drive-through town since I've lived there, and that was the mid-'70s. And there's been a lot of planning kind of going on. And before we even talk about that, and the reason I'm going this way is in Plymouth, CalTrans just recently finished building a roundabout, which in the United States of America, we kind of look at as what? Unless you live in Sacramento, where they're all over downtown, we just don't experience them up here. So before I get to San Andreas, I want to ask, how is that roundabout working in Plymouth now that it's completed?
Yeah, actually, that was the first roundabout in CalTrans District 10, which we cover 8 different counties. We've got 3,500 lane miles that we maintain. So having this be the first roundabout, it was a big deal for us. The county in Amador and the Amador Council of Governments did a great job of leading that project. It was really kind of locally driven. We were happy to partner with them, and indications are that it's a great success. They've actually done some landscaping in the middle of it. They've got historic ore carts. It's kind of the gateway to Plymouth and the Shenandoah Valley.
I mean, that intersection, anyone who's been through there knows that every once in a while it became a big bottleneck.
Right. Yeah, and that's the beauty of roundabouts is that not only do they promote safety, which is our number one priority, but they also turn out to be more efficient than a 4-way stop sign. Because it never stops. People aren't backing up in a queue. It flows really smooth. We did our ribbon cutting there, and the fire station is just down the road. And so I had an opportunity to watch the fire truck come through the intersection, and nobody had to get out of its way because there were no cars queued up. It just came right through and went on its way.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, so it was exciting to see.
And we were talking before we started filming that I had watched a Mythbusters show, and we're all kind of familiar with Mythbusters because they filmed all over here and over in Amador County. But they did one of their studies on a 4-way stop sign intersection versus a roundabout, and the roundabout, they were blown away. The Mythbusters were. Yeah. But the roundabout was much more efficient. So it's interesting. So I guess us Americans are going to finally catch up to the rest of the world.
I think we're going to be seeing more of them because they're so effective. And one of the other things that people don't appreciate on the roundabout is for people who are walking and trying to cross the street, traffic is only going one way. And so rather than having to look this way and look that way and figure out, you only have one direction of traffic, and so it is easier and safer when you're a pedestrian too. So it's just a great solution.
And it's counterclockwise, right? So that you're basically making a right turn to get where you want to go.
Correct. Yeah. You threw me off on. I had to think about.
So I know. That's why you saw my hand spinning on the table.
But yeah, that's exactly right. So you just essentially keep making right turns until you get to where you want to go, and then you exit.
That old 3 rights make a left.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And so roundabouts have been part of the discussion for San Andreas. So where is the planning now for getting traffic through San Andreas and kind of helping at places like Mountain Ranch Road?
Yeah. So there's the great news for San Andreas and Calaveras County generally is that the COG and the county have been very proactive in securing grant funding to pursue these kinds of really forward-thinking planning processes. And so the county actually adopted the San Andreas plan, which is the commercial corridor and gateway study. It does call for 2 roundabouts on either end of town.
Okay. The other one out at Pool Station Road?
One's at Pool Station. The other one is actually right before you come down the hill into town. And so it's going to create a real traffic calming before you even get into San Andreas and act kind of like a gateway to town. This is a plan, so there are potentially other things that could get added in over time. And I think especially once people see how well those intersections work, then there may be an opportunity to look at some of the other intersections as well. But the county adopted that plan, and so now it really is up to the local community and to work with the state and federal partners to figure out which pieces are the ones that have the highest priority that we want to take from the study phase to the plan and implementation phase.
Okay. And so where does all that planning planning kind of sit now in San Andreas? I know there's been a meeting or two, I want to say. Are there more in store?
Well, they adopted
because
the plan.
The plan is adopted.
Yep,
so
the plan's adopted. So now it really is being involved with the Council of Governments and understanding what's there and helping to voice what things should be a priority to start first with.
Sure. Okay. Now we're down to about our last 3 or 4 minutes, and I wanted to kind of stop because I started the broadcast with mentioning the cone zone.
Oh, yes.
And, we've seen the signs and we kind of, laugh about it a little bit, but, slow for the cone zone. That is a really serious thing in California. CalTrans workers, especially in the Central Valley, are working on highways where cars are going by them at 70 miles an hour, if not faster. But up here in the Mother Lode, when folks encounter construction, what's the first thing you would tell them to put in their mind when they see that sign that says road construction ahead? Yeah,
think about your most important person in your life and imagine that they're working on the side of the road and you want them to come home safe to your house that night. Our employees are really doing great work in difficult situations. Since 1926, 187 have been killed while working on California's roads. In April every year we have the CalTrans Workers Memorial, and we just came through that, and it's really fresh in my mind. Excuse me. And you think about those workers and their kids and their families.
Oh, yeah.
And so people seem to be in a hurry all the time.
Yeah.
I know modern life has its demands. People have a tendency to be looking at devices and being distracted in other ways. And the reality is life is precious. Life is short. And whatever time you may save on this trip is not worth the risk that you're taking for yourself or one of our workers. We want everybody to get home safe every night. So help us out by slowing down and really paying attention when you're in the cone zone.
You bet. And something else up here, especially talking about our mountain roads and the fact that there are so many curves on them, is when that sign says flagman ahead, you're usually thinking, oh, that's quite a ways down there.
Right.
But if traffic has backed up and you're coming around a corner that isn't normally blind, as we might say, you're going to suddenly come on to traffic that has stopped.
Yeah. And we really work with our contractors and our to give as much advance warning as we can. But as you know, things can change pretty quickly, and it's not just the construction zones, because when we're in these rural areas, things roll off the hill.
Yep.
Things jump into the road.
Yep.
Every corner you turn around, there could be something unexpected.
That's
so
right.
really help us out by paying attention and slowing down, and everybody will be safe.
And obey that flagman.
Obey the flagman. Woman. Yes, exactly.
I have a great story. At Russian Gulch State Park, I watched a flagman. This is 30 years ago, if not 40. Watched a flagman smack the hood of the car of a woman who did not stop. She kept creeping past him. And he kept showing her the stop sign. When she moved again, he just turned and smacked the hood of her car.
Well, that wouldn't be in our manual of
I know it's not, but I loved it because it was a kind of a she had it coming, from the bystander as a 10-year-old boy watching this lady creep by the construction worker.
It is. Everybody can be frustrated when they encounter construction. They're doing a tough job. They're doing the best they can, and if they can help us out, that's
and they're not trying to hold us up, folks. They're trying to make our roads better. So Warren Alford from CalTrans, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I hope you folks appreciate the information. Until we get to our next broadcast, folks, I'm Mike Taylor. Enjoy.